Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football, from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
What up? Welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast on a Monday today. My name is Tom Dougherty, your host. As always, this podcast is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. It is the college football edition today on a Monday, as we're going to go in and do some talk on the SEC coaches. We've had some turnover in that conference, obviously, with the addition of Jimbo Fisher over at Texas A&M. We have Dan Mullen now at Florida. Joe Moorhead now at Mississippi State. So some guys to talk about. Obviously, we have our stalwarts in down in Alabama with Nick Saban, our favorite, Nick Saban. And obviously Gus Malzhan still down at Auburn. Mark Richt at Miami. Willie Taggart, actually, that's a new coach. Willie Taggart's actually, no, that's not SEC. Jump again, that's ACC. That's on Wednesday. Wednesday we'll do the ACC coaches. Florida State and Willie Taggart will be on there. So, yeah, I think I touched on all the new coaches, right? Still LSU, we have Coach Ed Orgeron down at LSU. Lots of stuff to talk about, lots of stuff to get to, and we'll do that throughout this show. Start the first couple of segments. Also, Kyler Murray has signed with the A's. He'll sign a deal with them that allows him to play with the Oklahoma Sooners for one season only. So, kind of, I don't know, I guess just... Oh, well, yeah, I'll honor my commitment, but just for one year. I'll cross my fingers. I don't know, with Lincoln Riley's, we'll talk about that. We talked about it a little bit last couple of weeks, seeing if that's going to be an issue for Oklahoma. Maybe Lincoln Riley won't want to put him out there as much and risk the injuries, knowing that he's got a different kind of future in front of him compared to other players that he's had before, or even the players on the team now, regarding different sports, and want to keep him healthy so he can go play baseball and make all of his money over there. Also going to get to some big games on the schedule, and obviously every team, at least the ones in the top 25, and we'll touch on that probably in the last segment today as well. So we'll just jump right into it. SEC coaches, at least the ones in the top 25, and we'll touch on that probably in the last segment today as well. So we'll just jump right into it. SEC coaches, at least the ones in the top 25, and we'll touch on that probably in the last segment today as well. So we'll just jump right into it. SEC coaches. SEC coaches. We'll start in Alabama with Auburn and the University of Alabama. Obviously, Nick Saban. We've talked a lot about Nick Saban in this show, and the fact that whether he is great with the recruits, because he is keeping an open door policy with NFL scouts, so he can be the best. Mentor, be the best vehicle for players to get to the NFL, which he has proven to be over the years, having the most first-round draft picks than pretty much any other program we've seen in recent history. But and also guys that have gone and had nice careers in the NFL, especially on the defensive side. We've seen, Mark Ingram has gotten there, so has Derrick Henry's kind of found a home in Tennessee as well. But going off of his pedigree, you can't really say anything negative about him. And the guy has allowed access to his program. If they've had the all-access stuff on ESPN, you can go see. He's always been very verbal and visible in the media, and also he puts a great product on the field. I mean, I've said it a couple times. I think the fact that when he was interviewing for the job at Alabama all those years ago, all those championships ago as well, he was saying that I might not be the best coach, but I'm only the best recruiter. And obviously the fact that he has all those relationships with the NFL. The fact that he was in the NFL, he's probably, made great relationships and friendships with these scouts who probably love these Alabama players because they know they're coming from Nick and they know they're coming ready to play. The only one knock is the fact that he might work his players a little overboard and they get a little burnout in the NFL. We've seen that with Trent Richardson, but a couple different defensive players as well, maybe flamed out a little bit because of the overwork and just being the wear and tear of football that it puts on you. But I think the programs now down there, they have all the conditioning stuff. It gets you all ready and it's top of the line. You can't pretty much beat Alabama football. I mean, there's obviously a great programs out there all over the country, and we'll get to them. We talked about a lot of them on this show as well, but Alabama always seems to have that pedigree where, you get Nick Saban's talking to the media all year round. He has his Coca-Cola bottles out on his podium. They how much paid for that. Coca-Cola did not a bad endorsement right there. But he's always very visible. One of the most visible coaches in college football, of any college sport, pretty much. And that's Nick Saban down at Alabama. I mean, obviously he gets a lot of following because of the fact that he's very vocal and gets in the media a lot, gets in the news on ESPN a lot. But he's also, the guy's put together multiple good teams and multiple, obviously when you have the top talent on the field, it's easy. I don't want to say it's easy, but this is the guy who's always had the most pressure on him, always had the most to lose because Alabama is always expected to win and expected to be great. So when they don't win, it's kind of a shocker. Like last year, you lose to Auburn, you don't even get to play in the SEC championship game. And everybody's like, oh, they don't deserve to be in the college football playoff. Oh, they're going to be just limping in there if they get put in. They're going to put Alabama in because they're going to lose viewership or lose money because they're going to put in some less popular team viewership wise. So they put Alabama in there, 4th seed. And then what do? They go in and whoop on Clemson, the number 1 seed, and then they go into the national championship game. That one was a little squirrely, obviously. We all saw that. Back in January, having to put in the freshman, but that's another testament to Nick Saban right there. The fact that he saw what was going on, saw that Jalen Hurts was not doing it for him, made the switch at halftime. Kirk Herbstreit, go watch the tape. Go watch the broadcast from back in January from that game. Kirk Herbstreit said the same thing. He's like, if they really want it, he called it. He's like, they might consider putting Tua Tagovailoa in because they need more vertical passing game. Georgia is basically just stacking the box, and they can't do anything. Bo Scarborough has no lanes to run. Jalen Hurts has no lanes to run. He's just making plays with his feet and his athleticism, and the receivers can't get open because, receivers were getting open, but he just couldn't get the ball down the field to them. And so he puts in the freshman quarterback who has the more vertical passing game, has the more ability to drive the ball down the field, and they get the win. Obviously, on the last play of the game after that last sequence is got to be one of the most crazy sequences in college football history because, number one, it's in overtime, and number two, the freshman quarterback, number three, he takes a sack and loses 12 yards on that one play. The play prior to the game-winning play where he just beat that corner. It was either a blown coverage, as the corner thought he had a safety help over the top. There was no safety help, and the receiver got behind him, and Tua threaded a perfect ball in there for the touchdown. But watch those side by side by the coaches. You got to hand it to ESPN, and the fact that they have about 50 million cameras and all the broadcasts that they have, all the different types of broadcasts you can watch for the national championship game, and you can see Coach Saban and then Coach Kirby Smart, which we'll get to on the show in just a second. And their reactions, where Kirby Smart thinks, "Oh, okay, I'm good. I got to do a defense." Where it's like, what is it? What was it like? 3rd and goal from the 20 or something like that, or 25, and they had one last play, or maybe it was even 4th down. One last play, and all of a sudden they just make this miraculous play, and Nick Saban obviously changes from his more deterred state to a state of elation at that game. So, you got to hand it to Nick and his ability to prepare his players for the big moments, and even the ones that are freshmen. And we even heard that, reports that Tua was thinking about transferring if he didn't get in that Georgia game. So, maybe it was all writing on the wall. Good thing that Jalen couldn't get much done and had to put Tua in, and now Tua is almost seemingly the expected starter coming into the season. All right, moving on to, we always have a lot of coaches to get to. I had to kind of, we'll spread this out through the first two segments here. But next up, we'll go over Kirby Smart and in a second. But next up is going to be Gus Malzhan, obviously down at Auburn, and I like what he did last year. Obviously, Gus Malzahn's always been that kind of very cerebral, very play calling guy. I think who they had before, obviously, was able to get them to where they wanted as well. But Gus Malzahn's always been able to be very we'll watch him on the sideline. It's pretty funny. But, the ability to get his defenses where they are in that kind of conference that they're in, it's very much, like I said, line play. It's all about getting getting that edge on the line, basically, whether it's offensive line push or defensive line pressure on the opposing quarterback. But this is Malzahn's the more offensive guy, coming from being that offensive coordinator. But he's been at Auburn since in 2013, so he's had a good experience there. Has had the turnover, gotten that his recruiting trail got on. Obviously, battling it out with Auburn, and the recruiting is not easy. He's able to get a different kind of player. I think Auburn's kind of prided themselves on being kind of a different offense than Alabama is. Alabama's more of that power pro style offense. Auburn's been able to kind of run a more of a spread kind of read option offense. Obviously, last year they had a great dual threat in the backfield with Petway and my other dude that I like. Obviously, it's on the Detroit Lions that I can't think of his name right now. Why am I totally blanking? Kerryon Johnson, there you go. And then obviously Jarrett Stidham is coming back this season. Be a good thing for him. I think is going to be coming back and trying to lead that team. Obviously, last year they had a great running game where he was able to really able to help him with the play action passes. I think a lot of naked boot routes he was able to really get the ball down the field there with a lot of those. So it's always helpful. And Gus Malzahn's that kind of, like I said, very cerebral, very inventive, and very innovating on the offensive side. So down in Auburn, when you're basically little brother all year, obviously they beat Alabama last year, so they can take a little bit of that pressure off, maybe a little bit this year. But every year when you come in as a team that you think, we're going to be good enough we can compete this year like they were last year. I loved Auburn at the end of the year last year. They were the hot team in college football last year and could not quite sneak into the. If they they beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, they probably do sneak into the in the college football playoff, but they couldn't quite sneak in. Even after beating Alabama, Alabama still gets the nod and then takes advantage of it, obviously, to get in. But Gus Malzahn's done a good job there. I like the recruits he's been able to bring in. I like the players that he's been able to groom and turn into NFL players. Has always been kind of the offensive philosophy with that no huddle, hurry up offense, getting speed on the field and making sure that you are up tempo and kind of outrunning the defense on the offensive side when you are just coming through and make sure you have a good balance between running and passing. I think that's why last year they were pretty effective, because they were able to establish the running game with Petway and with Kerryon Johnson, and then have Jarrett Stidham, who also was a great athlete himself and could run the ball himself if he really wanted to. But with that play action pass, like I said, those naked boot routes where he's able to get on the outside of the formation and then be able to either find an open receiver or run it himself and get in the end zone or get for some good yardage for first down. But Stidham coming out, I think what did he get to, like a minor shoulder? He got a minor shoulder surgery this year, so I think he'll be good to go for the training camp coming in the fall at the end of the summer. But Gus Malzhan, always been a fan of him. Been a fan of his antics on the sideline as well. But definitely been able to innovate on offense. Obviously, he's been a guy who really, in 2003, he wrote a book and actually published a book and video talking about how to implement a hurry-up offense, and the fact that the hurry-up offense can be turned into a whole offensive philosophy. And look at how it's transcended football. Now we're seeing it in the NFL. We're seeing it in obviously all across college football and all sorts of on all the levels, basically. It's kind of it's a thing where you can implement it on pretty much any kind of offense that you're running. Is basically these you saw Oregon. Oregon was the Chip Kelly. That was the end all of end all, where they're literally ESPN has a timer, or whoever's airing the game, Fox or ESPN, or it doesn't matter, it has a little timer trying to see how fast are they going to get back on the ball? How fast are they going to get back on the ball? It simplifies everything for the players. The offensive line has the blocking cards and everything on the sideline. They just look at the sign. It's a simple verbal play calls and everything, or hand signal play calls from the sideline for all the players, and we have to huddle up. So we're even getting that in the NFL where it's all verbal play calls and everything too. Or Big Brother Ben Roethlisberger just flashes a little gun sign, little go sign to Antonio Brown, and he runs a deep post. I mean, those guys, obviously the longer you play with the player, the more nonverbal communication you can develop, and it all plays into this no-huddle speed offense that Gus Malzhan developed himself all those years ago. All right, we'll wrap it up for this first segment. We'll come back and do some more coaches in the SEC, and we'll talk about Kyler Murray in the third segment as well, and some big games in the fourth segment. So everybody stay tuned. Good show, packed show today. Stay tuned.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back, GSMC Football Podcast, the college football edition. We're going over some SEC coaches. Kind of took some time last time with the Nick Saban and Gus Malzhan overview, but obviously we did say that Dan Mullen's new coach, obviously at Florida, Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, Joe Moorhead at Mississippi State, also Chad Morris, the new head coach at Arkansas, Matt Luke over at Ole Miss. I think he did finish up the season last year on an interim basis, then was made the whole full-time head coach. And then Jeremy Pruitt, the new head coach at Tennessee, after that whole debacle happened down there. But yeah, obviously the issues going on with that coaching search was well documented. But I do like the Pruitt hire is interesting. I mean, he's pretty good. Obviously, has had a good pedigree with the defensive side down at Georgia, Alabama, and Florida State, and been part of some big national championship runs and everything on the defensive side as well. So not a bad hire down there at Tennessee. I like Jeremy Pruitt there. Matt Luke at Ole Miss. Obviously, with the issues that happened on the way out for Hugh Freeze, there can be a severe overhang of uneasiness due to the NCAA and having their hands all over that program. Obviously, the departure of Hugh Freeze is not the greatest backdrop to start off a new campaign or new regime there in Oxford. But I think Matt Luke, you saw him a lot. He's been all over. They made sure he was on ESPN a lot. He was on the coaches panel when they did during the national championship game. Showed pretty good prowess and ability to get over there. Obviously, when he was with them last year as the interim on the interim basis, he did get him to a 6-6 record, and then also just keeping him on, I think, was an ability to just show some faith in his abilities and not have to go through a whole other coaching search. You'd be able to hire from within. Chad Morris, Arkansas, obviously he did come over from he was a Clemson offensive coordinator, was over at SMU as a head coach as well. Is a spread offensive guy, and I mean, this is a Arkansas program that hasn't really seen the light in a long time because of the fact that they've been kind of buried beneath all the other talent that's in this conference. But with the fact that this guy has been able to turn around a program at SMU that didn't really have much, get him to a 7-5 record. Obviously, hasn't quite gotten to the a overall record that he wants to in his career, but has been able to get get over there to Arkansas. I mean, obviously Gus Malzhan was a hopeful option after Brett Bielema, but obviously he's got a pretty good gig over there at Auburn. But Chad Morris has experience in Texas, been over there at SMU, can recruit Texas, knows Texas pretty well, and is pretty good, and it's going to be a value for Arkansas definitely in the future as he tries to kind of bring that program back to the light at the SEC. In the SEC, I mean, it's tough. And when you're playing, I mean, we can go look at their schedule even for this season for Arkansas. I mean, I remember when they had who was there? They had what was it? The guy, I mean, who was his name's on the tip of my tongue, isn't it? Oh, Darren McFadden, wasn't he? He was Arkansas, right? That was probably the last time they were pretty relevant when they had McFadden, because he was pretty electric on the field for the Razorbacks. But I mean, was I right? Yep, University of Arkansas was pretty electric for the Razorbacks, and they haven't really seen any. Hadn't had much pedigree since then, so we'll see what's the implementation of a spread offense, maybe a little more dynamic program there on offense for the Razorbacks. Also, Jordan Moorhead's at Mississippi State. Do like that. Obviously, him coming over from Penn State had some good couple of years over there with James Franklin and sending Saquon Barkley. Trace McSorley now comes over to Mississippi State, and I mean, does kind of obviously with the same kind of thing, speed and efficiency on offense as Chad Morris at SMU. Now you got Joe Moorhead over there as well, as he is going to be trying to get. I mean, Mississippi State again, kind of the little brother Ole Miss. But Mississippi State did have, when they had Dak Prescott and everything, it was nice that they were able to get up there in the ranks as well. We'll see if Joe Moorhead can bring them back with some. I mean, offense is obviously key in the team in a league where points are a premium. If you can get some offensive minds on your team leading the way, like Joe Moorhead over there, obviously created a pretty nice offense at Penn State. It's going to be a good addition for your program. And down to Mississippi State, I mean, expectations are. It depends. I don't see a Dak Prescott on the horizon for them. But it's always nice knowing that getting a coach in there, see if you can find the next guy. I mean, that's the thing. We'll find out who he is if he can pluck him out and get him down there into Mississippi, make him a bulldog. Might be able to see the next Dak Prescott, next big guy out of Mississippi State. Obviously, I think Dan Mullen in Florida is going to be great. He's obviously got a little bit of a quarterback situation to figure out. I think Felipe Franks is probably the right guy for this season. He'll do his own recruiting and get probably his own guy in there. Florida, you should get back to the pedigree that it was at when it had Urban Meyer. I think Dan Mullen can definitely do that for them. And obviously, being with his ability to put up a good mark in Starkville, where he was before for the Bulldogs, obviously getting to all those bowl games with Mississippi State is a great mark for him. We'll see if he can do it at a little more visible power, a little more expectation at Florida. I mean, Florida, you saw Jim McElwain didn't last very long. You got to win at Florida pretty much if you want to stick around, and that's definitely a key. Dan Mullen, it's got to do that, and the fact that you're going to have a guy who's been working with quarterbacks for a long time, a guy who has had success getting quarterbacks ready. Obviously, he was with Dak Prescott, has been with Tim Tebow, Chris Leak back when he was with Florida before, has worked with Alex Smith and Nick Fitzgerald as well. So, I mean, I think that Felipe Franks can only benefit by having this guy as his head coach. And if in the future he obviously is going to be recruiting his own guy, Dan Mullen will be getting his own crop of players in there, only spells positivity and in the future for Florida, I think, as they start this new campaign with a new head coach like that hire there. And then Jimbo Fisher, Texas, obviously, this was at Texas A&M. This is going to be a interesting ride for him, I think, in this as he leaves Florida State in kind of a scorned way as he jumps ship over to College Station. It's going to be an interesting ride to see. I think he's obviously still got a question marks at running back. I mean a quarterback. We'll see where he pulls out some talent. I mean, I think this is a guy who's been able to win a national championship when he gets talent. And down at Texas A&M, they're definitely hungry for the chance to get into a college football playoff. And being a team that just got itself, I mean, how long have they been in the SEC for? 4 or 5 years maybe. They definitely want to try and get their footing in this conference as they did shift over, and being one of the only Texas teams to jump ship over to the SEC. We'll see what he can take that. I mean, he's 83-23 in his coaching record overall. You got to like that. So I mean, the fact that the A&M, when they got through Kevin Sumlin, they get a guy like this, you got to be happy over there if you're an Aggies fan. I think he's going to. They said the most kids, or most people ever for their spring game at Kyle Field. I mean, that field is huge. It's like I think it's like the fifth biggest stadium by capacity in the United States, maybe even the third or fourth. But no. Gotta like Jimbo Fisher. Never really been the biggest fan of him, obviously. I think he's kind of been not really the funnest guy for the media to talk to. Not the most animated guy. He can get kind of animated on the sidelines, but obviously he's already had an issue with fans at the end of his tenure down at Florida State. We all heard about that, as that got in the wind of the reporters and out there in the general public to read. But I mean, the fact that they've been able to pick out a guy like Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M has got to make him happy, and I think that he can get some good kids down there. I think it's really recruiting, the ability to take his recruiting now, use his connections in Florida to get guys over to A&M. Is going to be a helpful future, a hopeful future for them over there at College Station, especially. As well, looking at the other coaches, those were kind of the 6 new guys we went over there. But we also talked about Dan Mullen and Gus Malzhan and Nick Saban. We got to go over. I mean, obviously, we still have Kirby Smart at Georgia. Got to hand it to him in the first season to be able to do what he did there at Georgia is pretty amazing with his defensive ability. I think if you're a defensive guy, you have a freshman quarterback like that, Jake Fromm. The expectations aren't going to be as high, but Fromm exceeded them, and the fact that he was able to get as far as he did his freshman year is only going to put more confidence and more experience under his belt. So I think coming back this season with the defense that they have and the defensive ingenuity that Coach Kirby Smart has, he can kind of let that offense go and let it be good. Obviously, the big hits, I think, are obviously the running backs, losing Chubb and losing Sonny Michel. But DeAndre Swift is there, and that guy is really good. You saw flashes of him in the playoff as well. So don't sleep on Georgia. I like Georgia this year to be quite good again. It would be tough to beat them this season. Bouncing around other coaches, Ed Orgeron at LSU. I mean, he's kind of more of a coordinator guy. I don't know. LSU obviously hasn't really found their next big name guy after losing, or after not losing, but after letting Les Miles walk away. But I think that Ed Orgeron definitely has been able to be a guiding light for that program, and is going to try and get him back to where they were before with the Mad Hatter Les Miles, obviously down there in Baton Rouge. But got to figure that out. Got to get some good recruits in there. I don't know. Ed Orgeron seems more of like a rah guy than an X's and O's guy. Not really big on. I don't know. It's just interesting to see what he can do there. As far as some of the other schools in the SEC that we don't really get to, obviously Kentucky football is more. Kentucky's a basketball school more, but they got a football team too. Don't forget about them. Mark Stoops is their head coach. Obviously, his brother was over at Oklahoma State for a long time, but now entering his. What is this going to be? His sixth season at Kentucky, and trying to get that school back to the kind of get that back to light. It's going to be tough in the SEC. You're kind of seeing it's kind of the doormat. Same thing over at Vanderbilt, where they. You're happy to be in the SEC, but when you have to go against the Alabamas and the Auburns every year, you're just kind of like, ugh. Can we get over this? But Derek Mason's at Vanderbilt, and it's kind of the same thing. You deal with that private school stuff. You got to have recruits that are going to be up to the academic rigors that you have at Vanderbilt. Very high octane academic school, and it'll be tough. It's tough to get them kind of get them where they want to be. Obviously, when you have to play big rivalries with Tennessee, Georgia, Ole Miss, Kentucky. You got to play all these teams every year. It's going to be tough to find some victories where you're at. Obviously, at a not the biggest football power in Vanderbilt. All right, where else am I going for the SEC here? We did Texas A&M, we did LSU. Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Mississippi State, Tennessee. I'm counting on my hands here. Vanderbilt, Kentucky. Where else do I have to go? I'll figure it out, and we'll do it. We'll do those last few schools on the other side before we get to some talk on Kyler Murray. So everybody stay tuned.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back, GSMC Football Podcast, the college football edition, segment number 3 today on a Monday. Pack show for you today as we've gone through most of the coaches in the SEC. We have a couple more schools to get to. At South Carolina is Will Muschamp, and everybody remembers Will Muschamp. He was at Florida for a little bit before he did a little stint at Auburn as a defensive coordinator, then got the job when Steve Spurrier stepped away in Columbia. But no, South Carolina kind of gets forgotten. Obviously, they were really good when they had Jadeveon Clowney. But I mean, having a guy like Will Muschamp that knows how to win, has had success. I mean, he did have a little success at Florida. Had to come in and obviously didn't last very long around there. But after coming in 2011, but I think that the fact that he found a good little gig at South Carolina shows you that he's got some chops. Obviously, being the defensive guy can be big. Obviously, when it comes to schools like South Carolina, you know that you're going to have, I mean, you can recruit, if you can recruit defense, you're going to be able to compete in the SEC. Yeah, having the offensive side is great. I've talked about that with some of the offensive coaches we have now in the SEC leading the way. But you saw what Kirby Smart can do in his first year down at Georgia. Obviously, you get some good players in there. Mark Richt knew how to recruit down there at Georgia as well. So Kirby Smart took over that roster and ran with it. But I think Muschamp, this is, I think, his going into his third season at Carolina. Is going to be pretty cool. Seeing him with his first year really rotating those recruits that he got in there and seeing what he can do, taking some of his connections from Florida, maybe being able to lure some guys up there. But with the fact that he is at South Carolina, look for a tough defense from them, and to be getting in some low-scoring games and being able to hopefully get that offense figured out. They just had a tight end. Their top tight end got drafted, I think, in the first round by the Ravens or something like that. So they're to obviously figure something out with the weapons down the field on offense. But on the defensive side, he's going to be able to do just fine there. And then Missouri is the other school that we hadn't gotten to on this coaching carousel. Well, it's not really a carousel. We're just going through the coaching carousel. Already happened during the off season. But at Missouri, they have obviously still kind of work to do to get back up into the football ranks. They have Barry Odom there going, third season. Has had some tribes and tribulations. You can't say 11-14, kind of hovering closer to 500, hopes to get over that. In college football, obviously, you want to be closer to like 800, 80% of your games at least, or 85% winning because of the fact that you have so small margins to get to where you want to go when it comes to making the playoffs, something like that. But the SEC is tough, and being able to get in there and win is going to be obviously a tall task for Missouri. Obviously, have not been able to quite get the talent they've wanted. Obviously, when they had Blaine Gabbert and a couple other of those top players. Michael Sam was a top player in the SEC when he was there. So Missouri's still trying to get up there in the ranks, and I think with getting Barry Odom's own recruits in there is only going to help. This is a guy who came over. He's been in the program. Came over from Memphis actually. And this is his first head coaching gig. So get a fresh face in there. You think younger coach, you can kind of try and get some dynamic aspects in there. Played for Missouri himself as a middle linebacker, so he's an alum and everything as well. It's always nice to keep it in the family. See if he can get you some wins in the future. But Missouri, not really the biggest threat in the SEC. All right. That was all the coaches. I'm pretty sure we did LSU. I've gone through all of them. That's I think it was 14 or 12 teams in the SEC. So we've gone through all the coaches there. And then also I do want to get to some Kyler Murray talk in this third segment because he did sign with the A's. They did it was a conditional thing or was a it's what the reports are saying. It's like they signed a deal basically that allowed him to play for 1 year only, basically 1 year only. I think that I don't want to call it foolish. I don't want to call it like anything like that. But it makes me wary. I think it makes me wary. It's football. He's a running quarterback. It's a collision sport. I've talked about it a million times. The guy is not the biggest kid. He's a small kid. Hopefully he's elusive enough where he's going to miss some of these kids because he does play in the Big 12, which is a little more helpful. I think if he played in the Big 10 or the SEC, a little bit more, I'd be even more concerned because of the fact that there's a lot of big dudes and not that there's not big dudes in the Big 12, but the fact that the defense is a little more taken care of in those other two conferences that I was talking about. A little more tough in the trenches versus the Big 12's a lot more spread offenses, a lot of spacing, a lot of room on the field to run around. Baker Mayfield did make it through the season last year, running around a lot. But the A's were able to bring him over to Oakland, had him on a broadcast during the game, I think, actually, even. But this is a guy who signed for $4.7 million in his signing bonus because that's the draft slot they picked him in. They picked him 9th for a reason. They thought he was good enough to be picked 9th overall. This is a kid who is going to play outfield for a long time and hit for a long time because of the body style. He's going to have a place in the league because of his speed for a long time. Even if he only hits like 250, if he gets on base, if his on base percentage is anywhere around 350, 400, he can get on base and he'll steal some. That's kind of like turning a walk into a double pretty soon with his speed because it can kill. So he kills in a lot of sports, especially baseball. So Billy Beane is the general manager for the A's. Everybody remembers him from the Moneyball movie that was made with where he was played by Brad Pitt. But this is a guy who takes analytics very seriously, takes what he can see on the field, obviously combines it with the numbers he sees, compares and contrasts and goes there. This is a guy who has commented and said that Kyler Murray is one of the most dynamic athletes they've seen since he's been on the team. So this has been with the team. That's for a long time. The guys think Billy Beane's been with the A's for upwards of 15, 20 years. He's got to be one of the more longest tenured executives in baseball. The fact that he says that about Kyler Murray, the fact that he's able to be comfortable. I don't know how comfortable he is. I can't read his mind. How comfortable he is regarding letting him play with Oklahoma this year. So obviously, the fact that he was able to back up Baker Mayfield last year, get on the field a little bit, we did see kind of his what he can do. He did run 14 times for 142 yards last season. Did throw for 3 touchdowns as well. So it does remain to be seen. Obviously, looked good taking batting practice with the A's, ceremonial batting practice with the A's, because he's the guy who is going to be a franchise player, I think, in baseball. I just think the fact that he could play football and play for a top-tier team that was in the College World Playoff last year, had the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback last year, got a young, dynamic coach, and then the fact that they're going to allow him, he's saying he's honoring his commitment. is great. Obviously, it's great that he is able to go and play football and have the ability to play both sports. Is great. I just hope. I'm going to be doing prayers the whole. If I were the A's, if I was Billy Beane, I'd be doing prayers before every game. Just like, stay on your feet, buddy. Get up after every hit, or run out of bounds. Don't get hit. Like, everything like that. So obviously, his agent is I think he did get Scott Boras as his agent. He was able to comment as well, saying that, that's my kind of quarterback. Saying that obviously he loves the fact that he can play both sports. But if you're Scott Boras, you're a baseball agent. Usually, he's an agent for a lot of different high caliber baseball players, and with it's a lot of money going around as well with their contracts as well. A lot of popular baseball players as well. So the fact that he's gotten him as his agent is just crazy. The fact that he could have an agent and play Major League Baseball or play professional baseball, not quite Major League Baseball yet, but and have the signing bonus and then go, I'm just going to go to my side job and go be the quarterback for Oklahoma, and all these other kids that are on scholarship are on food stamps and are just hoping and plaguing and prodding to work hard enough to get to the NFL and maybe then make your paycheck there. Collar's like, I already got it, buddies. I already got it. I got my paycheck right here. Maybe he'll take care of him for a season or something like that, if we can even do that. I don't know what the rules are, but the fact that he can go out there and play is, I don't want to go into my rants again, because we all know how I feel about that. Go back and listen to some other Kyler Murray. If you see Kyler Murray in the title line for a show, go back and listen to that if you haven't already. You'll hear what I have to say about the rules. I do agree that, let him play both. It's fine, but the fact that he can make money off of his abilities, and Tua Tagovailoa, who's going to be the most visible, talked about and probably the most televised starter that we see, football player that we've seen in recent history on college football, because he can start for so long. Jake Fromm, same thing. They can't go make a cent off of their likeness, off of their abilities before they're professionals. But Kyler Murray, just because he plays baseball, he can make $4.7 million because he was the 9th pick overall in the Major League Baseball draft in 2018. So obviously got to make sure he stays healthy. Got to make sure he stays ready for baseball, because I think that's going to be his future. He hit .296 with 10 home runs, 47 RBIs, stole 10 bases while playing center field for this is his first play center field for the first time in his career. I think he's definitely got the ability to play anywhere in the outfield with his speed. So he'll find, like I said, you play any outfield position, you're fast. You're going to find your way to the majors very quickly. You should be surprised how don't be surprised if he's in the league by 2 years, or a year and a half, 2 years, because he has a lot of tools that can be used in different ways. Whether he's just going to be on the bench and pinch run and be a terrorizer that one in the base pass, whether he's going to be a defensive replacement in the outfield because he has got a good glove and he can come in late in the games. Or, if he can hit, that's even an added bonus. If you get hit for power, it's even another added bonus. This is the guy who's been deemed a 5-tool player. We went over the 5 tools. You got to hit for average, you got to hit for power, you got to run, you got to throw, and you got to have a good glove. So, that's really what it is. If he's got those plus, or at least close to plus arm, plus glove, plus legs, the bat will come around, I think, and he'll be able to make a name for himself in Major League Baseball, as he already has in football, being the guy who's a decorated high school player, transferring from A&M to Oklahoma to be the backup for a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, then be the heir apparent to him. I don't know. I guess Lincoln Riley's like I can say, we'll call less dive plays, less QB draws where you're going to get squished in the middle of the line. Maybe keep it more on the perimeter so he could run out of bounds. But I think that puts pressure that when you have a guy I feel like he's got, I don't know the kid. I can't speak for him, but I know that if I don't know about me, I can't talk for me, because if I can't, $4.7 million, I'm not playing football. Sorry, I'm not doing it. Bye. I'm not playing football. I know you love football, but I'm going to play baseball. I'm focusing on baseball. I'm going to get to the league as fast as possible to help my team that just drafted me 9th overall and gave me all this money for a signing bonus. I'm not going to even risk twisting my ankle or tweaking my knee, or getting some sort of nagging shoulder injury or something, or my neck or injury, or anything that can happen, even a minor injury that's kind of annoying, nagging injury can last and be effective and affect you down the road in baseball. If it happens on the football field, it's just so much more common, and so many more opportunities to get hurt, and it just scares me for Kyler Murray. We got to hope that kid stays healthy so he can go make a name for himself wherever he would like. But I just think this is going to be an interesting thing for him in that program on campus. He's going to be a big man on campus. He's obviously, I think, was he a redshirt sophomore or something like that, getting picked and having this paycheck hanging over his head while he's supposed to be this amateur and is playing with other amateurs and trying to be an equal, even though he's not an equal to anybody on that team whatsoever. And is going to try and lead that team, and they're going to see him, oh, dude, you already got one foot out the door. Like, you're just going to be here for 1 year. You're playing baseball. Like, why are you even here? Like, I feel like that's going to be the feeling for a lot of different players. Maybe not all the players, but I bet you a couple at least will be thinking that, at least in the back of their heads, if not saying it, at Oklahoma. All right, that'll wrap it up for this segment. We're going to come back and talk about some big games on the schedule for all of our favorite teams around the nation, as obviously we love talking about rivalry games and big games that mean a lot, have implications for the college football playoff as well. So we'll do that when we come back, so stay tuned.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, welcome back, GSMC Football Podcast, the College Football Edition, final segment of the day today here on a Monday to start off our week. We started off week with some SEC talk on some coaches, all the SEC coaches. Give my take on the 6 new head coaches as well in the SEC. Talked to little Kyler Murray as he was introduced by the Oakland A's over the weekend out in Oakland, as well as signing that deal that allowed him to play for Oklahoma for 1 season only. Getting into now, as we'll go through some of the top games coming up this year on the schedule, as for at least for the top 25 teams. Obviously, Alabama, their big game of the year every year is the Iron Bowl against Auburn, especially when Auburn at the level they're playing right now. I mean, for me, Iron Bowl has been great ever since I started really watching college football when I was younger. How long? I don't even know. I think it was probably only 4 or 5 years ago. But when Auburn had that crazy run back from the missed kick, and they run back, Chris Davis runs it back all the way, as they call it, the kick 6, as they call it, to beat Alabama all those years ago. And then last year beating them as well. I just think, Auburn, their team last year was on fire at the end of the season. Unfortunately, they did lose. Didn't they lose to UCF though? I think they were just mad. If I were Auburn, that bowl game that they were put in, I would be pissed too. I don't know. You don't want to lose games, but they lost to UCF, and they probably were a little bitter they didn't make it into the top 6. They would have liked their chances against Clemson. Would have been a great game, but ended up being kind of a dud when Alabama came in and just stomped on the Tigers. But big game this year. Obviously, Iron Bowl for both teams. It's the biggest game, as they will be coming in and going out of this. I think this one's going to be in. The game's going to be in Alabama this year for this one. Obviously, no more having to deal with any other players out there in the SEC. I mean, this is a Tennessee team that's gone nowhere. Missouri's gone nowhere out east, so this is going to be a play-in game as the top two teams going for the Pac-12, or the SEC championship game, the play-in game, usually as one of these two teams will represent the SEC West. Clemson, their big game is going to be obviously Florida State, as that's going to be the big ACC test for them. I don't think there's any Miami on the schedule, but they got to beat Florida State if they want to make it back to the ACC championship game. Obviously, all the other games matter too, but the fact that they got to play Florida State, I think the game's on the road. This one, they do play NC State and Louisville. It's going to be between two different games that they have to deal with. So this game will be sandwiched in between the Florida State game will be in between the NC State game and the Louisville game, and this one will be down in Tallahassee. So a big test for Kelly Bryant and that Clemson offense to get something going against the Florida State defense, really putting the pressure on the Florida State offense as well, whether it's going to be James Blackman back there or DeAndre Francois for Willie Taggart. But I think it's going to be really up to their offense to put pressure on the other offense to match them. Ohio State, their big game is, you expect me to say Mississippi. I'm sorry, Michigan. But Penn State is going to be, I think, their biggest rival this year, even though the big rivalry game is that Michigan-Ohio State game. But if they can get past Michigan, the Penn State's going to be the next toughest one, because Penn State has a little bit weaker schedule this year. They have the experienced quarterback in Trace McSorley. That whole Big Ten East is going to be basically who can have the most wins against each other, because it's a pretty tough test out there. But this one for Ohio State, getting past James Franklin is going to be a big deal. Obviously, the game is a big deal, but the fact that this game is at Penn State is going to be a big deal for Ohio State. A big road win for them would be very important for their resume as they try and get back to the college football playoff as well. Georgia and Florida, that's a big game for Georgia. Obviously, is a big game for both teams every year, as it is a big rivalry down there in the southeast of our country. But obviously, Georgia has been running away with the Big Ten, with the SEC East for a little bit here. And Florida and their new head coach should definitely want to have something to say about that, and they'll have a chance October 27th, as this is always a very good a big game for Georgia on their schedule, but I think this one is going to be at home against Florida. So this one will be a home against Florida. They'll have a little bit of home cooking, obviously, to help them out there, but I think any rivalry game is going to be a tough one, a tough test for Coach Smart and his team. The Red River rivalry is showdown is a big game, obviously, every year. Oklahoma having to deal with Texas this year is going to be another one. Colin Murray's going to be out there in his first ever start against Texas, probably first and only start against Texas, because of what we talked about last segment. But I think it's going to be a definite test for him, as they're going to have to try and get past this team. I think they're going to be able to get past them just fine. It's going to be at home, so they'll be able to get back on top of the Big 12 yet again for a fourth year in a row. Washington, their big game, October 13th at Oregon. Oregon's supposed to have a little bit of a comeback year this year. Mario Cristobal's got that team going. They got some good recruits in there, some talent on the field for the Ducks, as obviously Washington, and in the final year, Jake Brownlee is going to try and utilize that to try and get back into the college football playoff talk at least, and then sneak into the four would be great for them, and they have to definitely get past Oregon. A big road win in Eugene would be big for them. Austin Stadium is not an easy place to go to play, and if they can steal a win away from the Ducks, that can help them in their resume as well for the college football playoff. There's going to be a bunch of teams fighting for that fourth spot this year, I bet. Wisconsin, obviously, their schedule, I've been whining about it for a long time, knowing their schedule is probably one of the weaker ones in the Big Ten, especially in the West Division, playing all those cupcake teams. The toughest two teams they play in their division is Northwestern and hopefully a Nebraska team with Coach Scott Frost. But that schedule for Nebraska is a gauntlet for Scott Frost in his first year. But the big game for Wisconsin this year is going to be at Michigan. That's one of their tough. That's probably the toughest road game for the Badgers this year. And Paul Chryst, as they'll be a big favorite to win the West again this year. But a road win against Michigan would only help them more get their resume solidified for a bid for a top four team in the playoff this year as well. Miami, every year the Florida interstate rivalry against Florida State's a big one. This year it's even bigger. They're going to be at home. Florida State will come down to Miami to play that one, as they're going to try and get another win as they try and start their own streak, as they did snap that 7-game losing streak last season. Obviously, Florida a little bit of a down year, but against this team, they're going to have to get past them to be able to try and have this Coastal Division wrapped up for them by the end of the year. Definitely going to be helpful for Mark Richt as well if they can beat Florida State when he goes and tries to get his newest recruits. Be like, hey, we beat Florida State. Don't let them lure you away. I'm where you want to be with. I'm who you want to be with. Michigan State, their biggest one, also same thing as Ohio State, Penn State. They're gonna be going to Penn State, just like Ohio State is. All these state schools: Michigan State, Penn State, Ohio State. They're gonna be going to Penn State. The Spartans will, as there'll be a big win for them if they can get past James Franklin and company at State College. So obviously that it's all jockeying for position. Basically, like I said, whoever they're going to beat up on each other, whoever can come through the most clean scathed in that the Big Ten East is going to be able to jump on top. Obviously, Wisconsin out there is the favorite. We don't really have a favorite. I would say Ohio State probably is a favorite in the Big Ten East with Penn State, with Michigan and Michigan State right beneath them. But like I said, the fact that Ohio State has to go to Penn State, Michigan State has to go to Penn State. Michigan, though, it's the next school up on here. November 24th, they're going to be going to Ohio State for the game. So that's going to be at the Horseshoe in Columbus, and it's going to be a big test for the Wolverines there. Jim Harbaugh still has yet to win against Urban Meyer, has yet to get a victory. He's 0-3 in his chances against Ohio State, looking to at least right the ship a little bit this year. It's going to be tough in the hostile territory, but another big road win. These are all big road wins. These are all big road games for these teams. We went through Ohio State, Michigan State, and now Michigan. All these road games against their inter division, not even their inter division rivalries, to try and jockey for position to get into that Big Ten championship game. Because basically, the Big Ten this year, obviously we only get 4 teams, and last year we had no Big Ten, we had no Pac-12. It was two SEC teams and a Big 12 and an ACC team. Obviously, we were no Big Ten. So if you can try and get the most clean skate through your division and then also beat Wisconsin, you're gonna have a chance. I'm not just putting Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game, kinda, but not really. You can try. You'll definitely have the pedigree. Say Michigan State beats Penn State at Penn State, and they roll through the rest of their schedule. That would include obviously Michigan and Ohio State. They could be a team that could beat Wisconsin and have a good resume for the college football playoff. This is deeming to be good. I don't know. Obviously, Alabama got in there over Ohio State last year. We'll see if that comes down to that, where Alabama is going to have to be that at-large team without winning their conference and having being selected over a conference champion has to do with a lot with strength of schedule as well. West Virginia is the next school. Obviously, they're the 11th ranked school right now. They have a big game at home against Oklahoma. The fact that it's at home is a big deal. Oklahoma having to come over to the East Coast, kind of a long trip for them. One of the longer trips in the Big 12 because West Virginia is over there kind of by itself out in the East Coast versus the Big 12 being more of this Midwest central area kind of conference. But the fact that you got Will Grier, you're gonna have a big crowd there in Morgantown on November 23rd. It's gonna be rocking as you'll have Kyler Murray coming into hostile territory. If West Virginia gets by there, they hold serve at home against Oklahoma. They'll be number one, and they'll be dealing a big blow to Oklahoma, a loss for them, and gaining a big win, as that's going to be probably their biggest test this season. And the fact that it's at home is even more encouraging. Notre Dame, they're a big test. Obviously, they have the two big ones against Stanford, and they play Michigan to start the season off. They play USC, but I think the biggest one being said, it's going to be their big road test at Virginia Tech. I think the fact that it's kind of around some other games they're going to be playing. Obviously, they played Notre Dame last year. Miami last year, Notre Dame did, and kind of lost out their chances with the loss to Miami, the blowout loss. But these road games, they play a lot of ACC teams. It's kind of put into their schedule as well, so it's going to be a test for them at Virginia Tech. Last school before we head out for the day, Penn State is going to be tested at when they have to go to. Actually, no. So same thing. Ohio State and Penn State have the same big game. Obviously, it's going to be in College Station, in State College. Didn't travel for this one. It's going to be at home. Penn State going to be hosting Ohio State. Like I said, if they hold serve, they deal a blow to Ohio State. Maybe Ohio State stumbles against Michigan as well. Now they have 2 losses. You're going to be looking even better getting through that Big Ten East. Obviously, like I said, the team that comes through the least skate, basically the team that comes through with only 1 loss in the Big Ten East is going to be able to win that division and get into the college football playoff with the win in the Big Ten championship game, because I don't think that the committee is going to hold out the Big Ten champion for 2 years in a row, assuming there's no other big suitor like in Alabama. Like I said, basically that was kind of the only way that can happen, I think, is having to have Ohio State knocked out of that, is because you had Alabama not win their conference. If Alabama wins the conference, then you have all the other conference champions have fair game. I don't think there's going to be really many at-large bids this season. All right. That's why I think 6 teams is where we're headed. It's going to be I think they should go to a 16 playoff and make it like NFL and have the 2 top teams be a bye. But that's a whole nother show. It's a very different segment. We'll lead it off maybe on Wednesday with some talk about that as well. All right. That'll wrap it up for the show. And we'll be back on Wednesday, like I just said, for some more talk on college football. Everybody, hope you had a good weekend. Hope you had enjoyed listening to the show. We'll be back 2 more shows today. We'll do the 2 more shows this week. We'll do the ACC coaches on Wednesday, and then the Big 12 coaches on Friday, as I kind of plan out the week a little bit for you guys here on the GSMC Football Podcast. Until Wednesday, everybody have a good start to your week. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.